Hello, dear ones. Greetings from All Saints Orthodox Church, Bloomington, Indiana. Father Peter John here. Christ is risen. I hope and pray you are all well. I wanted to talk today about Elisha. It's our first Elisha story of this week. I'm going to spend the whole week talking about Elisha. I want to point out there are two other videos I've already done on Elisha that I did previous to Elijah. And they were, number one, on the relics, and then the other one was entitled, I believe, Who is With Us? It was about one of the fiery chariots and horses. So both of those are already in the Elisha section of these videos, and just wanted to let you know. But tonight I want to talk about a certain woman whose husband was a prophet and he died. And she came to Elisha and told him about this. She said, man of God, listen to me. And she told him her husband had died, that the creditor was going to come and take away her two sons to sell them as slaves to pay off the debts. Now, obviously, this is a miserable state, and she was miserable. And Elisha says to her, what shall I do for you? What can I do for you? And so she was conflicted because she obviously didn't have what she needed to pay her debts, and she was hoping that Elisha could step in and help. Well, what he did was he gave her some advice. He told her, he said, what do you have in your house? And she said, all I have is a jar of oil. He says, okay, here's what you do. You go to everybody in your neighborhood and you borrow empty vessels and you bring them back to your house. When you get back to your house, close the door behind you and your sons, and you take that oil that you have and you pour it into the first vessel. When it's full, you set it aside. You fill the second vessel, you set it aside. You do that until you've filled every vessel, and then come back to me. So she does. She borrows all the vessels, and she takes the oil, and she fills them. One of her sons brings her an empty one. She fills it up. The son brings her an empty one again. She fills it up. Pretty soon they run out of vessels. She says, give me one more vessel. He says, there are no more vessels. That's all we have. And the oil stopped, right? It stopped multiplying from her jar. And so she goes back to Elisha, and she tells him what happened. And she says, what shall I do now? And he says, go, take all of these vessels of oil and sell them. All that money that you bring in from selling the oil, you give it to the creditor, you pay off your debt, and you and your sons shall live. That's the story. That's it. It's beautiful. This is the beautiful thing about the Old Testament. There are all of these little stories, and some of them are bigger than others, but they're just treasures. We hear about this woman then who is destitute. She has nothing left. She's just lost her husband. The creditors are come to shut her down, take away her sons, which means basically she's left for dead. And God steps in through his prophet Elisha and tells her how she will survive and keep her sons and go on living. So it's beautiful. When these times come for us, sometimes it feels like we hit a wall, like we don't know what we're going to do next, like things aren't making sense or adding up right now, like all of the doors are closing instead of opening. When that happens, we have to be faithful and remember these stories of old. These are not just stories of something that happened a long time ago and they don't happen anymore. Miracles happen all the time. We see them. You know, the great thing about being a priest is, you in your family, you might only see a miracle once in a great while, once in a number of years. But as the priest, I get to see everybody's little miracles. And so I get to see all of them. And it's faith building. And God gives that to his priests so that his priests then can encourage and strengthen those who are out there in the flock of Christ and who are seeking his mercy and grace. So thanks be to God, and I'm thankful for you. And my prayer is that the Lord will bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. Through the prayers of Elisha the prophet and of all the saints, the patrons and protectors of our holy community, Lord, have mercy upon us. Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen.